you need to stop doing this or you're gonna get banned right now. When I was live streaming this afternoon, one of my viewers made me aware that he had gotten banned for abusing the sword emote cancel exploit in a regular game of the finals. So I had to figure out what's going on. I asked around a lot and I've been digging around a lot, and while I haven't received an official confirmation from the developers or the community managers just yet, I figured we need to piece together the evidence that we do have and get the news out there. We'll also explain what this means and some more in-depth stuff later in the video. I just want to establish that somebody actually got banned for this exploit before we dive into it. My viewer, as I said, received a ban for exploiting, and after he reached out to Oscar, the game's community lead, for more information, this conversation occurred. While Oscar didn't state that he used an emote cancel or whatever outright, reading through the lines or applying the context that they're clearly talking about the emote cancel, I mean, my viewer basically verbatim says that that is what he did, and Oscar implies that that's what he did. Embark doesn't like confirming or denying these things, so this is probably the closest we're gonna get. But it's very obvious that they're talking about a sword exploit of sorts. My viewer then took to the Light Build channel on the official Discord, where another user had received a ban around the same time, allegedly for also exploiting sword cancels. I even had one Discord user in the channel tag me twice, saying that he got banned because of me. So it's safe to say people are getting banned for the sword emote cancel. And this, believe it or not, is an actual controversial set of bans. So naturally, in this video, I want to go over how the exploit works, how big of an advantage it gives, and why I believe that it shouldn't stay in the game. We will also discuss whether I believe the bans are valid or not, since I do want Embark to crack down on these hard exploits that give very clear advantages, but there are plenty of ways to go about this, and I'm not sure whether I believe this was one of them. But let's get technical. How do the sword exploits work? At the moment, I haven't had it confirmed whether the bans are due to a phantom strike or a emote cancel or something else, but assuming it is either the phantom strike or the emote cancels that we recently covered on my channel, let's go over how they work. When using the light sword, by chaining a set of inputs, you can perform a lunge, stab, and lunge, which is enough to burst down a heavy. When pulling this off, you can actually practically cancel the entire normal attack animation in the middle, with a normal sword attack in between lunges now deals damage to the enemy in the middle of the second lunge animation, which significantly cuts down its time to kill, especially on a heavy that requires so many hits. The other exploit, which makes most sense against mediums, is the emote cancel. By adding an expression right after your first lunge connects, you can start the second lunge up to half of a second earlier, which can cut your time to kill against a medium to down under a second. Both of these exploits can be difficult to pull off without practice, but aren't too hard to get down, especially the emote cancel, and they give a pretty huge advantage, that being cutting down their time to kill so much so that most players will not be able to react to it in time. It's also worth noting that the emote cancel exploit doesn't just significantly lower your time to kill, but it also makes it that much harder to hit you, as it can be combined alongside dashes or other movement techniques to keep the light constantly moving, with the target barely having a chance to react before the light already is somewhere completely different. It's safe to say that these exploits make a huge difference, and we keep seeing clips from high-level sword players absolutely demolishing even high-level diamonds who just cannot fight back against them. We're actually seeing more and more of these exploiters in high diamond, and it's becoming a real pain to deal with. Sword used to be a little bit annoying but manageable, but because of these exploits, they have become a real problem. And the thing is, while some might excuse them and call them techniques, I'd say that they're too far detached from the rules or the logic of the game to actually be fairly considered techniques, which would mean, in my opinion, that they would have been worthy to stay in the game. We all know that historically, tons of games have had bugs, glitches, and exploits that ended up being normalized and turned part of that game. Most notably, we have bunny hopping or rocket jumping, but as I said, they all sort of fit the logic of the game. If we limit the argument to the finals, however, what we call insta-glitching, where you throw a glitch mine and punch it midair to instantly pop it, or window hopping, where you climb from window to window exploits, you probably wouldn't, since they all exist within the rules and the logic of the game and the abilities that you use themselves. You don't throw in a bunch of weird unrelated input, like an expression in the middle of that very chain of inputs, to get a much faster burst of damage. Two other decent examples of exploits that have been patched out, which I don't think ended up being bannable, even though they probably should have been if they were reported, is of course the 100% accuracy exploit that you would get from swapping to a stun gun and then back to your primary while adding another unrelated input, or quick switching to skip the cocking animation on the SA-1216, which in turn made it fully automatic and significantly boosted its damage per second. Both of these broke the logic of the game, since you skip the cocking animation of the SA-1216, a clear balancing mechanic, And of course, if you turn a weapon 100% accurate using a series of inputs, you know, you're switching to a weapon and back, and then just not having recoil or whatever, clearly breaks logic and the rules of the game as well. But why are Embark suddenly banning people for emote canceling or phantom strikes? It seems really random, especially since this has been in the game for a very long time now. At the very least, since Finals was released, it's been highlighted by sword content creators and sweats for such a long time, albeit to a smaller and more niche community, and it's never really led to anything. I think there are two reasons, and I may or may not be in the middle of that. First, as you all might know, I recently made this video covering every single exploit that you can currently do in the Finals, leading with both of the melee exploits and then 13 more. And by the way, if you haven't watched the video, I'd say you should. After that video, there was a clear uptick in people using the sword, or you know, specifically there was an uptick in people using the sword in conjunction with these exploits. Along with that, every time I would run into somebody clearly abusing either of the exploits and deleting me, a teammate, or just about anyone, I would instantly call it out on stream, and I would usually call it cringe or something and report them for exploiting, because you know, it is. I didn't think it would lead to anything, but I did think it is exploiting, and that was in front of hundreds of people at a time. And if you do that several times a day, it's gonna start catching on. But like I said previously, Embark doesn't really seem to ban people for using exploits historically. They even rarely comment on specific exploits or things that break their own terms of service, such as the third-party crosshairs that we have discussed on the channel before. But what Embark does do, especially now that we can manually report fair play rule breakers in their Discord, such as cheaters, is that they manually ban rule breakers. So even though Embark may not have been able to detect the sword users, or maybe even turned a blind eye to sword users or exploiters because it hasn't been meaningful enough, or because they've been working on a fix behind the scenes, due to the policies that they've made to deal with rule breakers, if you get reported the right way, which I believe is through the Discord, or maybe just often enough in-game where it catches their attention, they might actually just punish you and ban you. There's also a chance that Embark suddenly is breaking down on all of these sword exploiters as a fix finally is on the horizon, either in this upcoming patch or maybe the next few ones, but that's gonna be hard for me to comment on at the moment because I don't have a leak, I have no idea what's on the pipeline, that's just pure speculation. As for whether I believe these bans are warranted or not, I actually don't think this is the way to go about it. I think banning abusers and exploiters is good, but I think it should be a bit more consistent, and who knows, maybe there will be more consistent moving forward, but as far as I can remember, almost none, if not any at all, of the exploiters that I've seen have ever received any lasting bans in the past, and with the exploit being used for so damn long, it seems so strange that they would suddenly ban a bunch of players out of the blue with no warning, no nothing. I mean, they did break rules, so it makes sense they would be banned, but they broke rules for 6 months without a problem. It does seem a bit strange, and it raises a lot of questions, like, does this mean that they will crack down on sword content creators who have been abusing the exploit for a very long time, or are they at the very least giving them the courtesy of a heads up before putting them in hot water? There's no way for me to know, but I would hope that all streamers who do use these exploits would have stopped after the news dropped today, because obviously in eyes of Embark, it's not okay to be using them. But if this signals that Embark doesn't fuck around with enforcing the policies anymore, even taking it as far as cracking down on exploits, I'm not gonna lie, this is a bit of a clumsy execution. But if they stick to their guns and they keep this approach moving forward, where they will ban obvious exploiters or repeat offenders who get reported, then I think I can be okay with it. These bans don't seem permanent. It's a bit of a slap on the wrist, but they are putting the foot down and they say enough. No more sword exploits. Personally though, I would have preferred some type of warning or message to the community, either reminding them that they will enforce bans against players who break the code of conduct, or flat out stating that exploits like sword canceling will be punished. Either way, I'm hoping that we're seeing a patch to it soon, because as soon as the sword exploits are fixed, then Embark can take another look and have another stab at balancing them. Because right now the exploits are inflating and they're skewing the data and they're making it impossible to gauge whether the weapon needs balancing and whether it needs buffs, maybe even needs nerfs. We just don't know. We would have to see if the sword had been fixed. Though I'm sure that a lot of you guys in the comments already have an opinion on this, so just let me hear it in the comments. But anyways, that was my thoughts on these new bans. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and all that, and click the video on the screen to learn more about the other exploits that are currently in the game, so you can look out for them and maybe even toss a report out if you see them in the wild. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.